Chairman, you can start the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of the Cabinet. During the live broadcast, members, officers and guests are asked please to ensure that mobile phones are placed in silent mode, and members and officers are asked to ensure that microphones are switched off whilst not in use. Agenda item 1, would member services please report any apologies for absence?
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Warwick.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 2, the previous minutes. We're being asked to approve the public minutes, which are on pages 5 to 10 of the agenda pack, as being a correct record of the meeting, which took place on the 30th of September 2024. May I ask any member who doesn't agree with the accuracy of the minutes to indicate that now, please? I see no objection to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record of the meeting, so they are now agreed. Thank you. Right, agenda item 3, urgent items, and there aren't any urgent items for consideration today. Agenda item 4 is interests, and this is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct or any interest under the code of conduct on planning matters in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. I'll start off by declaring that I have an interest as being a trustee of FACT, the Fenland Association of Community Transport, which is mentioned in agenda item 12. So I shall hand over the chair to Councillor Hoy for that item, and I will absent myself from the room whilst that item is being discussed. Are there any other items that anyone has to declare, please? Councillor French.
Thank you. Yes, item 12, I have an interest in that, and I will be leaving the room.
Thank you. Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 12, I'm a trustee of FACT, and I will not take part in the debate, and I will be absent from the room during that discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Laws.
Only to say if any planning applications or discussions come forward, I won't enter into debate or vote on any planning matters.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, just to be a bit on braces. I have had a meeting with the Football Association about development of play zone projects, agenda item 7, but I've got a completely open mind in the debate.
Thank you. Any other declarations? No, thank you very much indeed. Now, the next item on the agenda should be item 5. However, as we've been joined today by members of the public who have a particular interest in item 12 on the agenda, and because we have a lot of business to discuss before that, subject to your agreement, members, I'm proposing that we consider item 12 next. Is that agreeable to you all? It appears to be so. Thank you very much indeed. Now, item 12 on the agenda, item 12 on the agenda is to brief Cabinet on the options which are available in relation to the future use of the open space land located at North Drive in March. And that report is on pages 155 to 184 of the agenda. As both I and Councillor French, as the deputy leader, have previously indicated our interests in this matter, in accordance with paragraph 2.1 of the Cabinet Procedure Rules, which constitute Rule 4 of the Council's Constitution, I'll now need to have another individual to chair this item. And my suggestion to you, if it's acceptable to members of the Cabinet, is that that be Councillor Hoy. Is that acceptable to everyone? Good, thank you very much indeed. Do I need a proposer and seconder for that, technically?
Yeah, why not?
We have a proposer for that, Councillor Laws, and seconded by Councillor Tierney. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I'll now hand over to Councillor Hoy to chair this item.
Thank you. So members will note there is an exempt appendix to the report at pages 163 to 184 of the confidential agenda pack. I'd like to remain in public session for as much of the debate as possible. However, if any member wishes to discuss the content of exempt appendix 2, then following presentation of the report, please confirm your intention and I'll take a vote on whether to go into exempt session. I now invite Councillor Murphy to propose the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The proposal of this report is to provide members with an opportunity to review and discuss issues surrounding the current and proposed use of land at North Drive, March. The background is that the council has been approached by two community-based groups seeking to acquire land currently utilised as public open space to establish a community orchard. In addition to the request for the community orchard, local members have expressed a desire to see the same area retained for the potential as use as a skate park, and also continued use as a public open space should also be considered. Progress. The officers, having received the competing bids, have paused further engagement with all parties and are now seeking the views of members as to the preferred use and course of actions they wish to see. The recommendations. Members are requested to note the report presented before us today. Furthermore, members are also requested to provide officers with instructions as how they wish the use of the land to be taken forward. The three options are community orchard, 2, reserve the skate park, or 3, retain as current use. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a second for Councillor Murphy? Councillor Mr. Thank you. Okay, the item is now open for discussion. Councillor Murphy, can you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you. Councillor Tierney?
Yeah, these all seem like good proposals. I quite like the sound of all of them. I'm kind of drawn towards the skate park. And the reason for that is because, in my experience, I know that this particular bit of March is fairly high on the deprivation index. And I think one of the ways that you can address that is by making more facilities available to the community. Now, it's fair to say that a community orchard is also a facility for the community. But I think everybody knows young people are going to hang out and they're going to exercise and they're going to do their thing, whether you like it or not, because that's the nature of young people, of course. And so they should. And I think if the council gets behind a project that gives them somewhere to do that isn't going to cause trouble, isn't going to be against the rules, isn't going to upset people, I think that's quite a strong message that we're investing in young people. So in my opinion, that proposal has the edge, although I must stress I rather like all three proposals.
Councillor Laws?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I've had a look at this. In my ward, we do actually have the Platinum Jubilee wood, and that has been successful, but it is in the right location. It is FDC land. It cannot be developed for anything other for a planted area. There is a constitution, they have a very strong voluntary group with a very active chairman. And this land is suitable because it's adjacent to the wash, it's got attenuation ponds, there are 135 trees planted there at the moment. And what you have to consider is why we have volunteers going up there daily. If fruit falls from the tree and it's not collected by any members of the public, then obviously it's collected by the volunteers, because it does lend itself to rotting food and obviously vermin coming in. And how this wood was established, they had many very, very good consultants offering their time freely, and the type of trees that were planted there. And I've got to say the lowest proportion is an orchard. And that's for the reasons I say, for it attracts vermin and if the fruit is not picked up. They also have herb beds and raised, they've got a beehive as well. But this is not something that was done without so much planning, so many people involved, and to say to plant an orchard is not very straightforward, I can assure you. But I really do think possibly this location wouldn't be appropriate, and I'm inclined to agree that it's an area probably that we need to focus more on the younger people, and maybe a skateboard park facility would actually be more applicable in that area or more appropriate. But I also would say that you have to be mindful of these areas because of people misusing it and antisocial behaviour. And this location has been really scrutinised before anything was done. So my view would be towards something like bringing forward something for the youth, like a skate park. Thank you.
Councillor Scanlon?
Thank you. I agree with everything that's been said by both councillors opposite. The Whittlesea Millennium, it's known locally as the local forest, but it's a beautiful place. It has taken a lot of planning. It didn't erupt overnight, but then again, the skate park won't come out overnight, but that is something for the youth of today to bring forward and let off steam in. And we see this, the skate parks throughout the whole area. I agree with what Councillor Law says. I don't think this as an orchard is in the right place in March. I think it needs to be thought out a little bit more, but I would certainly support the skate park as going forward.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment myself, if that's okay, just about location really, because we have in Wisbech 2 community orchards. One is technically in Norfolk because it's just off the Lynn Road, but it is a Wisbech Town Council allotment, and that's a community orchard. And we also have one in the middle of the park. And I have to be honest, my view is the one in the park is actually terribly located because it blocks a number of key facilities and is very, very poorly used, whereas the one on Lynn Road is actually really well used and does a lot of projects there. I appreciate you indicating, but unfortunately members of the public aren't allowed to speak, so sorry about that. Anyone got any else things they'd like to say? No? As there is a clear preference for the option of exploring a skate park, officers are instructed to undertake a more detailed assessment in relation to this option. As this now marks the end of agenda item 12, I now ask the leader to rejoin the meeting and resume his position as chair. Yeah, members of the public, you're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting if you so wish.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, returning now to the order set out in the published agenda. Item 5 is a request for funding in relation to the potential acquisition of properties to help support the council's housing duties. The report can be found at pages 11 to 16 of the agenda. I'll now ask Councillor Hoy to propose the report.
Yes, thank you. So the bit of the background to this is, as we're all aware, our spend on B&B is quite astronomical. It's not kind of something the Fenner's necessarily doing wrong. It is a nationwide issue at the moment, but obviously that does cause a lot of problems on our sort of general fund. So we do need to, where possible, seek to resolve that issue. One of the things, obviously, we find with councils is due to the bureaucracy and just how they're set up, they aren't particularly fast at moving. It's, again, nothing to do with Fenland or a slight on Fenland. It's just kind of how it is. That's the way of the world. So what we are asking is that Cabinet agree to set out 1.2 million so we are able to purchase 10 one-bedroom properties. The aim of that is that we'll be able to buy fairly quickly. They will be properties that don't really require much, hopefully, if any work at all. So we are able to get those fitted out and people moved in as soon as possible to sort of less clogging up of B&Bs. So that is the proposal, and hopefully members will be in agreement with it.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. May I have a seconder? Councillor Mrs. Laws, thank you very much indeed. The item is now open for discussion. Would anyone care to say anything or ask any questions? Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. I'm assuming these properties are going to be across the whole of Fenland and not just in one town or village.
Yes, I would like them to be across the whole of Fenland, ideally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm aware that sometimes people who are watching are going to jump to conclusions and think that this is for asylum seekers, and I'd just like Councillor Hoy to provide some confirmation as to the use of these potential properties.
A very good suggestion. Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, that is a good point. Obviously, people are concerned about that. No, this is not. This is for local housing needs. So people that currently, I won't obviously name the bed and breakfast, but I'm sure people are aware of bed and breakfasts within the district that people are currently residing in. It's to move them from there. And like I say, there will be people with a local connection to Fenland. It's not for asylum seekers.
Thank you both for that. And Councillor Miscantlin.
I noticed the recommendation is one-bed properties. We all know there's families put in bed and breakfast. Is there a possibility this could be extended to two-bed properties so that families can be accommodated other than putting them in B&B?
Would you like to answer that, Councillor Hoy, or do you want me to?
I can answer it. So yeah, we don't necessarily, well, I wouldn't say we don't need it at all, but the demand is much less now on families because obviously we have to work to move families out, partly because statutory we have to move them out faster, but also we have been working on doing that. We've obviously been doing a lot of work with housing associations to try and get their properties freed up for families, and also with the local authority housing fund money that came, we obviously had a focus on 2 and 3 bedroom properties there. So at the moment where the need is for single person accommodation.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Well, as there are no further speakers, the detailed recommendations are on page 12 of the agenda pack and seek approval of the proposals which are set out in the report. Those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Colleagues, we all know that Fenland is a great place to live, work or visit, and that there are major opportunities for economic growth within the district. We also know that along with our partners, such as the Combined Authority, we have an important role to play in helping to ensure that the district remains a great place and flourishes. The second strategic refresh updates the existing economic development strategy, follows on from the first strategic refresh and sets out how the council will play its role over the next 3 years. Ultimately, economic growth is delivered by local businesses and the most important role the council can undertake is to ensure the right support is available to entrepreneurs, owners and managers when making decisions about how and when to grow, about starting a business and why a business should locate to Fenland. In this second refresh, you'll find several examples of how our economic growth team have supported our local businesses. Paul Millard, Director of Vita Nova Solutions based in Chatteris, said, "I cannot overstate how valuable the economic growth team has been to us. They have been vital in what we have been doing. If I didn't know what to do, I contacted the growth team and they pointed me in the right direction." Whilst having a second refresh is important, by far the most important aspect of what I ask is action, including regularly meeting with decision makers and finding out what help they need, what information they require, and so on. You will find this second refresh continues the focus on measurable action and demonstrating that Fenland is truly open for business. I request that Cabinet consider and recommend the economic growth strategy for 2025-28 for approval by full council. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Benning. May I have a seconder for this agenda item, please? Councillor Mrs. French, thank you very much indeed. The item is now open for discussion. Would anyone care to ask any questions or to make any points? Councillor Tierney.
Thank you again, Chairman. First of all, I just want to confirm that I think this portfolio is in very safe hands with Councillor Benny and his officer team, and I'd like to thank them for this clear report. I hope you'll indulge me in a question. I wonder if Councillor Benny, I know he thinks about these things, and I wonder if he could suggest what challenges might be coming forwards for the council and the wider scope of economics, if you like. Perhaps he could share with us some of what he's thinking about, what concerns he might have for the future.
Councillor Benning.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Tierney. I mean, since I've been in this role of economic growth, we have had a lot of challenges. We've had opportunities of Brexit that I feel some of those opportunities were missed, and they were opportunities that, because of COVID falling on the back of that, were maybe missed and didn't deliver quite as they should have been, but Brexit was a success. We've had COVID, which has caused huge financial and employment issues within the economic area of Finland and beyond. And now we've got the green strategy, which is part of this. I see that a lot of the green strategy is really just common sense in business. It's looking at your costings, because all of those add to your final product. But there's also aspects of the green economy that I worry about, because we have got good businesses which are struggling because of the implications and the taxation that's being placed on them by this green agenda. And there we've had the budget, and this raid on national insurance, I feel, is going to be very detrimental to increasing wages, because businesses are struggling. They're struggling to get over COVID, and now they've got to be faced with higher employment costs and higher taxation. I'm also on the skills board for the Combined Authority, and I've been looking at the wages of apprentices. Now, it's all very well to pay people a lot of money. It's very nice if you can, but the wages of an apprentice since 2018 would double to next year's level, and that is going to restrict the number of apprenticeships that are available. I've seen on the news, I've read in the paper of companies that are going to have to scale these back because of cost savings, and I am worried about the young people of Finland being robbed of the opportunity to find apprenticeships. You know, they may not earn a lot of money, but they're not putting themselves in debt through going to university. And an apprenticeship is a very important part of the economy, and it also gives youth focus, and it gives them a life skill. And I am concerned about the amount of apprenticeships that may be coming forward. I see those as the challenges that, as an economic growth team, we may have to face later as the years pass out.
Thank you, Councillor Benning. Councillor Seaton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think one of the things also which is important within this economic growth development is transport infrastructure. You know, I my portfolio is constantly pushing both the CPCA and county over the state of our infrastructure here. And I think the growth, economic growth for new companies, present companies to expand does have an effect because of the lack of really good transport infrastructure. So I think, you know, that is something we have to really concentrate on as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would echo that very much so. And not just public transport, the road network. I mean, take Chatteris, for example. It's very central. It's nearly the same distance from Cambridge, Peterborough, Wisbech is a little bit closer. And we may be very central, but we're equally a long way away from main arterial routes of roads. We have a lot of things that are delivered to all the people of Fenland by Amazon, and that all comes by road. And not having the infrastructure is certainly holding Fenland back. James Palmer did have a plan to extend the M11 up past Chatteris. That would have been a good arterial route into Fenland, with Whittlesea bypass and the dual into the 47. I feel very much that roads get overlooked in a transport strategy. There's a lot of emphasis put on public transport, and being a rural area, there's an awful lot of cars and vehicles here that we should be supporting as well.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Councillor Miscantlin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I agree with what Councillor Benny said in relationship to apprenticeships, because I was an apprentice. It paid for all my toys over my lifetime of work. And I think it's essential that we encourage companies to keep their apprenticeships and their skill levels up to scratch, because if they don't, they will flounder in the future. And I think it is absolutely essential for the economic growth of Fenland and the surrounding area, because people move out of Fenland to other areas. And I think it's absolutely imperative that they keep it up. The wage side of it obviously is going to be problematic at some time in the future, but I still think apprenticeships are, and I'm a big advocate of apprenticeships. And on a little note, when I was an apprentice, my wages were £1 and a halfpenny an hour. But old school people, that's 5p. So it's grown considerably since then. So I am a big advocate of apprenticeships because it's good for everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Miscantlin, and I'm sure the halfpenny was very important in that. It made all the difference. Right. Any other comments from anyone? Questions? No? Good. Since there are no further speakers, the recommendation is on page 17 of the agenda pack, and it is for Cabinet to consider and recommend the Economic Growth Strategic Refresh 2025 to 2028 for approval by full council. Is this agreed? All agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 7 is the development of play zone projects, which is to be found on pages 63 to 92 of the agenda pack, and that concerns an opportunity to apply for Football Foundation grant funding of approximately £375,000 in the first phase for potential use in the construction of 2 play zone, small-sided, multi-sport pitches in Whittlesea and Wisbech. May I ask Councillor Miscantlin to propose this report?
Thank you very much, Chairman. The report is before you. To added notes to the report, Phil Hughes and I visited a constructed play zone in Peterborough, and we were very, very impressed with what had been provided by the contractors to do it. It is an asset, and I think a potential asset for the whole of Fenland, because although the recommendation is for 2, I think these, because of their design, will be utilised by people from outside the area because they are that good. We were very, very impressed with what had been presented. And in terms of community asset, I think it is an added bonus that these would be available to the public to use within the area.
Thank you, Councillor Miscantlin. I'll unusually take the opportunity to ask a couple of questions myself. The first question for Councillor Miscantlin is, do you have any comments to make about the length of these pitches, please?
Yes, when we visited the Peterborough one, we were in fact informed by the managers of it that they'd made a mistake, because they'd made a mistake of shortening it by 1 metre If they'd have extended it by the further metre, it then qualifies as a games pitch for the netball institution for Great Britain, that they can actually hold competitions on it. So Phil Hughes and I took that away, and I believe Phil has added that to the criteria, that we make our pitches 1 metre longer so that we can qualify for those assets that go with the pitch.
Thank you. I'm sure that lesson will be learnt. And my second question is just to ask you, Councillor Miscantlin, to explain about the fact that this is 75% funding and that the further 25% will need to be found from somewhere for each of these pitches.
62,500.
62, yeah, it's 62,500 per facility. The funding stream is being looked into by Phil Hughes so that we can, it hopefully won't cost Fenland anything or very, very little, so that alternative funding can be found to alleviate these problems.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Miscantlin. Before going to further questions, I really do need to have a seconder for this report, and Councillor Mrs Laws raised her hand first. Thank you very much. Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, I'm not happy to see that it would say if we can't get the money from elsewhere, we'd cancel the projects, because I know 62,000 is a lot of money per scheme, but actually in terms of capital projects, 62,000 for an entire football pitch, when you consider the match funding, is actually really good value for money, in my opinion. The reason being is because, just my personal view, obviously other people might think it's a waste of money, but I just think that these football pitches and sports are really doing a lot of wonders for young people. Now, you don't necessarily have to have these pitches, so something that's taken place in Wisbech Park on a Wednesday night is something the County Council are running, and their youth work team, and they did an external bid to the Million Hours Fund to get money for football, and they are having some of the most hard to reach kids coming on a Wednesday night. You know, the number one child on the problem solving group is coming to that football thing on a Wednesday night and is doing really well. So they do, I think, having these kind of facilities actually work wonders for the local community. So I would like to see us deliver these. Obviously, if we can get money from elsewhere, why would we not? We don't want to have to kind of pay for something we don't have to. But I just was a little bit nervous that the Wisbech one is obviously reliant on the town board. Now, we don't know that they'd say yes to it. I mean, I've not got any reason to think they wouldn't, because early indications have shown they're quite keen on obviously investing in leisure. But if they say no, or if they don't get the money, or it's not allowed for that, I would be very sad to see us then not be able to move ahead with the project. So I would suggest that rather than just cancel it, it would perhaps come back to Cabinet to have another look at.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. I can say, wearing my finance portfolio hat, that this proposal does require 25% external funding to be found. It doesn't need necessarily to be merely from the sources which have been listed in the report. There are other potential sources which could be looked at. But yes, I do believe that if we couldn't find the remaining 25% for one of the pitches, that is something which should come back before Cabinet, but it would then need to be considered along with all the other financial pressures and financial asks that there are throughout the whole of the council. But we wouldn't just drop this without bringing it back to Cabinet to have a further discussion. Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Chair. Completely agree with what's been said, and I think it would be such a missed opportunity if this doesn't come forward. And I know we all go back to funding, etc., but I think this is value for money. But most importantly, it's an inclusive space. But the other point about it, it's a safe space for children. And I think that needs to be highlighted greatly. It would be a great asset, certainly. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I welcome this. I've got a couple of questions, but I want clarification. You say it will be Wisbech and Whittlesea first, which I have no problem. And then in 2.2, potential further two facilities will be Wisbech Park and Estover. Is that an error? Is Wisbech having two chunks and Chatteris get nothing? That's the first question.
I'll ask Councillor Miscantlin to answer that, but just because March does get preferential treatment doesn't mean it's necessarily an error.
No, you're quite correct, Chairman. The facilities at the moment haven't been allotted to any other than Whittlesea and Wisbech. The others are proposed areas, but not necessarily where they'll finish up. Estover, you quite rightly said, it's because the land is owned by someone else. The current land that's being proposed is owned by Fenland, or one of their authorities. So it's easier to get planning permission to put it down than it is to go to a private person who says, no, you can't have my bit of land unless you pay me £1 million. So it's something that the land that is proposed certainly in March, is not owned by Fenland District Council, so therefore it's slightly more difficult.
Thank you, but you missed the point. You missed the point of my question. You said in 2.2, I've got no problems with Wisbech and Whittlesea going first, because obviously they own the land. I fully understand that. But potentially a further 2 facilities in Wisbech Park and Estover. I think that should be Chatteris somewhere if you own some land. I don't know. So are you saying that Wisbech then will have 2 lots? So that's the first question.
Councillor Scanlon, please use your microphone.
That may be a slight misprint, but at the moment, Chatteris hasn't been designated as an area for it. So it may well be in the future. These are only the light touch proposals, and that may change. The 2 confirmed proposals are Wisbech and Whittlesea, which are currently listed on the agenda item, but the others haven't been. They're all light touch ones at this moment in time.
Okay, if I may come back. Is this something that under section 106 of the planning that we could apply or ask applicants to the possibility of funding this? That might be a question to Councillor Laws, I don't know.
I'll answer that one then, given that it's financial. Theoretically, it's possible to do that, but in practice, we'd much rather find external funding if it is available. If we found ourselves absolutely strapped, then potentially that could be looked at. But we have to be very careful, because you have to fulfil the requirements of the specific Section 106 agreement, and we can't just take money which has been allocated for one purpose under Section 106 and use it for another purpose, or use it in a different area from where it's been allocated under the planning process. So theoretically, yes, it's possible. In practice, it may be slightly more difficult.
Okay, and if I just come back with my third point, obviously Estover at Marchtown Council funded the actual building of the pavilion. We agreed a couple of months ago that we will continue to fund it for the next 5 years. I believe the figure is £80,000 per year, because they're looking for a G3 pitch. So obviously March are keen to match fund things.
I welcome that approach.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. Councillor Laws.
Just going back on the point of Chatteris, I thank you if Whittlesea and obviously Wisbech is on the plan initially, but I do think we need to explore Chatteris as well. So it needs to be on that agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Laws. Councillor Cheney.
Thank you, Chairman. Absolutely in support of this proposal. I just think that I always look at things whether they're good value for money and whether they provide a suitable amount of community benefit, and this absolutely checks both the boxes. A small intervention for young people who don't actually ask a lot from the council can make such a difference to some people's lives. Not everyone, because some people are just fine and they'll get along whatever, but there are some people for whom the ability to go and do something productive and sporty will change their life, will take them down a slightly different path that they might otherwise take, and will prevent such a lot of issues in the future for them and for others. I just think this stuff is really important, and I think it's great that we focus so hard on it.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Scanlon.
I totally agree with what Councillor Tierney's just said. The feedback we got from Peterborough, which is actually next to the rugby club, they are overwhelmed with people wanting to use this pitch, and certainly the younger generation are in awe of what's there, and they are anxious to use it all the time. So much so that they bring some people out of retirement to monitor it while the youngsters are actually on the pitch. Sometimes they have to actually not physically remove them, but come on, we want to go home to bed. So yes, it is well used there, and is an asset to them, and I think it will be an asset to Fenland.
If Peterborough, Councillor Scanlon, can make a success of a pitch which is 1 metre too short, imagine how much of a success we can make of a proper sized pitch. Any other comments from anyone or questions? No, right. Well, as there were no further speakers, the detailed recommendations are set at page 64 of the agenda pack. Are these agreed? Those in favour, please show. And that's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 8 is the taxi tariff, which is to be found on pages 93 to 104 of your agenda pack. And this is a review of the previously deferred decision in relation to the setting of Hackney carriage tariffs. I'll now ask Councillor Hoy to propose this report.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So, as you might be aware, the Licensing Committee recommended that the maximum amount of fares that were allowed to be charged by Hackney drivers would be increased. Councillor Patrick, despite requesting an increase and a review, for reasons unknown, decided he now does no longer want that, and as you may be aware, at the last Cabinet meeting, filed a number of pages of opposition to said maximum allowable increase. So we went out, we asked the drivers what they would like, and they came back approximately 33% wanted to be allowed to charge more, and 66%, again this is roughly just from memory, about 66% didn't want to be allowed to charge more. So I think some of the reasons for that might be they were worried that people won't use them. I think that the advertisement of this and being told that fares are going to go up when they potentially wouldn't anyway, because people don't have to charge fares, has probably done more to scare the public and put them off taxi use than this paper coming to Cabinet that no one would have known about would have done. However, we do not have control of what people say and do, so they do have to obviously be allowed to do that, and then hopefully they will in future question and think about their choices and choices they've made. So the proposal today is going to be, with that in mind, we said we'd ask what people wanted. We've done that, we've listened, we've asked, and so as a result of that, I propose that we just leave the taxi tariffs as they were. We don't allow them to charge any more, and we review it again in a year's time. Personally, I think it's a mistake. I know some people have been saying online, I've got some kind of interest in it. I have not. I don't drive a taxi. I don't intend to drive a taxi. I'm not related to anyone that drives a taxi. Before I became portfolio holder, I had very little interest in taxis other than occasionally using them. But if you stop people being allowed to charge for the fare that they need to charge, they will not be a taxi driver anymore. And I think holding the fares is only going to help private hire. I think this time in the year we'll have very few, if any, Hackney drivers left. However, we did say we would listen to what people wanted, and this is what people claim to have wanted. So that's my proposal, that we just keep fares as they are and we review it in a year's time.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. May I have a seconder for this report, please? Councillor Tierney, thank you very much indeed. Just to respond to the comment just made by Councillor Hoy, it is very important when doing things such as this, setting the maximum tariff for Hackney carriages, that we do listen both to the general public, particularly those who use taxis, and that we also listen to the Hackney carriage trade itself. And it is really quite a fundamental point about the local government that we don't do things just off our own bat, that we do listen to what people have to say. Right, are there any comments or questions that any members may have? Councillor Tierney first.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is such a sad situation. First of all, the whole thing has been lied about by various parties since the beginning. Over and over again, those same parties have attempted to manipulate taxi drivers and the public by suggesting that we control the fares that taxi drivers charge, which we do not. We only control the maximum fare, and nobody has to charge the maximum fare. Now, most fair and honest people know that. They know this is just misleading. It's been deliberately misleading, I think, for political purposes, and I think such a sad mistake. Most of the taxi drivers I know, and I know quite a few taxi and ex-taxi drivers, are very sensible, hard-working, decent people. But there are a few who seem to be led by Councillor Patrick. Boggles my mind why anybody would listen to what he says. I believe he's led them down a disastrous path which they will regret for a long time. But we've listened to them, and it doesn't affect us. If we don't raise the maximum level, it's no effect on this council. They've made a big issue of it, so we won't raise the maximum level. But I think they've just signed their death knell as a group. Personally, I think that they will gradually die away in favour of private cars. And what a sad situation to be in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Chairman. This, what I'm about to say does not relate to this proposal. We're too late to change this. But I think that moving forward to next year, why are we even having a maximum fee? It's big state. We're interfering in private commerce. Let taxis sort their own fee out. I know Councillor Count has said you can't get a taxi in March on a Sunday afternoon. It's because taxi drivers don't want to work on a Sunday afternoon, or maybe there's not enough taxi drivers on a Sunday afternoon. I think that if we deregulated the market and actually allowed taxis to charge what they want, they should advertise before they ring so people know what they would be charged. I think that would be fair. They can advertise their own rates. Either they can be more competitive, or if they want to charge more for something, that's up to them. And for us to be putting controls over what is a private business, I personally see no need for an upper limit at all. And it would take the council out of all of the accusations of fixing things and wrongdoing, and listening to people. Let the people decide for themselves rather than have us decide for them what that maximum would be.
Thank you very much. And I will just emphasise we are here just talking about the Hackney carriage tariffs, where people are ringing private hire. That's not covered by anything that we do. Any further comments or questions from anyone? Councillor Ms. Hoy.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that Councillor Benny made, and I think the whole issue with Hackney carriage and private hire and things is very interesting. It's been a bit of an eye-opener, I have to say, the last 6 months, because you're dealing with very outdated laws as well. Some of the laws on Hackney carriage go back like 100 years, and we're dealing with things that modern world changes, and the markets change as well, don't they? Because if you go to lots of places, you've got various different private providers, and I know a lot of the taxi drivers are nervous about Uber coming to Fenland. It's here. I know of people being able to request Uber in Wisbech in March. And that is what happens, I suppose. I get that people want to have trade protectionism, and if you're in a job, you want to protect your job. I get that. It's just human nature. It's survival, isn't it? It's a basic human instinct. But I think if you kind of push that too hard and you get blinkered by that survival instinct, there is someone out there that's going to come in and they're going to take your market from under you, and so you have to kind of be careful of that, I suppose. In terms of the point about setting the fare, I think that's something we can, obviously, officers have heard that today. That'll be in the minutes. So I think when we review that in a year's time, we will look at if that's, I don't know if it's legally possible. We'll look at that if it is legally possible and what the implications of that are and how it might work. Because I do think it's a very bizarre situation, like you say, that there even is a maximum limit set by a council for one type of driver. It's just a very bizarre situation. So I'll ask them to look at that in the year's time when they review it.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Hoy. And it is worth mentioning, I think, that you are quite correct that we are dealing with laws which are very much out of date, and terminology which is very much out of date as well. If we recall, it's more than 100 years ago, I can tell you, that Hackney carriages are called after the types of horse which were used for the Hackney carriages, which were particularly strong and particularly well-paced. So I think that there's a lot which is very outdated in terms of the Hackney carriage regulations, which are still in force now. Any other comments or questions from anyone? No. Okay, then we'll take this in parts. We'll start off with considering whether to support the recommendation from the Licensing Committee and implement the previously proposed fee increase, or to take no action. So I'll therefore take a vote first of all on whether Cabinet members wish to support the proposed fee increase, and I'll ask for those in favour, those against and those abstaining. So those in favour of the previously proposed fee increase, please show. No one. Those against, please show. Thank you. And those abstaining, please show. That is agreed by a majority. Thank you very much indeed. As there's sufficient support, or insufficient support, sorry, for the proposed fee increase, the next decision is whether there should be a further review of the proposals, and if so, the time frame for that. Are there any proposals with regard to the time frame for a further review? Councillor Hoy?
Yeah, I'd propose in a year's time that we review them. And I think, I would say, with the point that Councillor Benny made as well, if it's legally possible to have no fare and what that means and the implications of that.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Mrs. Laws, thank you. Any discussion on that matter? Those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. We now move to agenda item 9, which is the Wisbech High Street update, which is to be found on pages 105 to 110 of the agenda pack. I'll ask Councillor Seaton to propose this report.
Thank you, Chair. As the report highlights, work remained ongoing regarding a future cost-effective design for 1112 High Street. Discussions are also taking place to assemble funding to support any potential construction work. On 24 High Street progress, work continues on the 24 High Street build. The building is finally up to roof level. The roof will be fitted and weatherproof by the 12th of December, subject to reasonable weather up to that point. Staircases and stairs are being fitted this month, with windows going in shortly. The building is finally looking like a building. The builders on site have received ad hoc positive feedback from the community, with the local people saying they're very pleased to see a building now occupying the gap. As highlighted in this report and the reports of previous months, discussions remain ongoing between our contractor and the council team regarding claims for extra time from the contractor, which could and would mean additional costs to the council. The contractor's original second claim has been formally rejected, with the council making a without prejudice offer. A response rejecting our counter-offer was received on the 4th of November. The project team has taken legal advice regarding this particular claim and will be replying to the contractor's rejection letter by the 22nd of November. There remains a further issue to resolve regarding additional material volumes that the contractor believes are necessary. The original materials claim was for £150,000. The project team has discussed this extensively with the contractor and the value is now down to approximately £60,000. The contractor is also claiming extra time to fit those materials and the project team is assessing this claim too. Finally, there is a potential cost regarding a delay to the front of the building. This is also under consideration, but the handover date of the building is anticipated for early to mid-April 2025. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. No decisions required for this, but I'll nevertheless ask if I may have a seconder for that report. Councillor Mrs. Laws, thank you very much indeed. The item is open for discussion if anyone has any questions to ask or any comments to make. Councillor Mrs. Laws. Sorry, Councillor French. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I welcome this council seat. This has gone on for far too many years. And it's nice that we're finally working at a completion date. So well done to the team.
Thank you, Councillor French. Right, there aren't any further speakers. No decision is required, so this report is simply for Cabinet to note. Agenda item 10 is the draft 6-month Cabinet Forward Plan, which is to be found on pages 111 to 112 of your pack. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you. The forward plan is therefore noted for information. Agenda item 11 is the renewal of an operational lease in Wisbech with a confidential appendix, which is to be found on pages 113 to 154 of your agenda pack. This relates to the current and continued occupation of the car park at Chapel Road in Wisbech. Members will note that there is an exempt appendix to the report at pages 119 to 154 of the confidential agenda pack. Now, we'll remain in public session for as much of the debate as is possible. However, if any member wishes to discuss the content of Appendix 1, then following presentation of the report, please confirm your intention and I'll take a vote on whether to enter exempt session. I'll now ask Councillor Mrs. French to propose the report.
Thank you. The purpose of the Cabinet report is to provide members with an update on the issues surrounding the current and continued occupation of the car park at Chapel Road, Wisbech. Members will note the content of the report before them and recall our previous discussions at our December meeting. The present lease came to an end on the 24th of March 2024, and we are holding over on the terms of that lease. To date, no notices to quit have been served by either party, and therefore the previous lease continues in place. At our December meeting, this committee gave officers clear instructions that due to the investment required, this council would require a minimum of 30 years term, although we would accept removal of the consent for the site to be used for fares going forward. The discussions between officers and the National Trust have been ongoing, with no progress and no movement on the proposed terms being offered by the Trust. As a final attempt to try and persuade the Trust to relent and be more amicable to the requests of the leader and the Chief Executive of the Council, sent a joint letter to the Chairman of the Trust seeking his assistance, and a copy of this letter is included in the report now before you. I am pleased to report that this approach does appear to have borne fruit, and the local trust estates team have now made significant movement on the terms proposed, as opposed to their original stance. The headline terms are now offered: term 30 years lease with break of 15 years on a 12-month notice. Breaks are mutual. Use of car park, no fares allowed. Officers are pleased to report the increased terms at certain periods from the 10 to 15 years, the term certain of the 15 years being in excess of the requested to note the update on the lease negotiations as reported herein. Furthermore, members are also requested to approve the acceptance of the terms as now reported and authorise the head of property, assets and major projects in consultation with the Section 151 officer and portfolio holder for revenues, benefits and CPE to complete required legal documents. And I would like to give a personal thanks to the officers who have suffered many, I think, sleepless nights trying to get this resolved over the last 12 months. So thank you, officers.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. French. May I ask for a seconder for this? Councillor Mrs. Hoy, thank you very much indeed. Now move to the debate or questions. Any comments or questions from anyone? Councillor Ms. Hoy.
Yeah, a couple of ones really. So thank you very much to Councillor French and all the officers for the work on this paper, because I think this is a very important car park for the town. I've always been very keen that we keep it. Just a couple of points I wanted to make really. I'm interested on the National Trust position regarding the fares. I guess it's kind of not our business to get involved in, but if I was the Showman's Guild, I would be potentially challenging them on that, because it's a bit, they've been there many years and they've got the statute saying they're allowed to have fares there, but I guess that's kind of not our battle to have, so we'll have to leave that to them, I suppose. So just two things. First of all, with regards to the repair costs, I'm much keener that we see as much work as legally needed rather than the full amount. I think the costs that they're estimating for the work is astronomical. So I think we should go with the in M7.1. They talk about a more piecemeal approach, and I think that's the one that we should go with regards to repairs, because I think we can't afford to go with the kind of bells and whistles repairs. And just regarding the fares and the future of the fares, obviously I suppose we'd like to reassure the public and the Showman's Guild that we do still want to continue having fares in Wisbech, but I know officers have approached the Showman's and offered some sites. I don't think we should be offering any sites until we've spoken with local members and also the public, because I don't want to lead the Showman's Guild down a path that we potentially can't deliver on any sites. I know there's been 3 sites suggested. All 3 sites have obviously pluses and minuses, and I just think we need to explore that. I'm obviously conscious of time, because obviously they are due back in March, but I think by the end of January we should be able to be in a position to give them a location. But if I could just stress that I don't think officers should be giving them a position until members and local people have sort of said their preference, because fares can be controversial as well as a positive.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you again, Chairman. Councillor Hoy has been a huge champion for the importance of this car park to the town of Wisbech, and rightly so, as have other members. It's so important because it plays a prime role in things like the doctor's surgery and some of the more local shops and some of the sporting facilities. There's a lot around that area that people need to park there for. It's often busy, it's well used, and we did run a risk of losing it. And, you know, that would have been no fault of ours, but would have been a bad outcome. So it's great news to see that the team have negotiated a way that that's not going to happen. I remain concerned about the fair. I do think the fair is important to Wisbech. I really value the Showman's Guild, and I think it's a tradition we definitely don't want to lose, and we must fight to make sure we don't. But I agree with Councillor Hoy that we do need to consult with the public, because there aren't many places the fair can go other than that one or two or three. And all of those places are going to have people who support and people who don't support. And whatever decision we make is not going to please everyone. And if we chose not to have the fair anymore, that would also displease a lot of people. So we have to consult with the public, get a good idea of what is best supported, and then I think try and work to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. Going back to Councillor Hoy, with regard to the cost of the repairs, I fully agree with you. I think it's absolutely outrageous, the cost. I mean, it does want some maintenance, but certainly the figure has been agreed. So I would look to officers to actually get realistic costings for what is necessary, you know, and we don't want a gold-plated car park. So that's the first point. With regard to the showman, obviously the National Trust were adamant with regard to Chapel Road. You're not going to be there. But I fully support members of Wisbech that they should be totally involved, and a consultation should be done before officers offers certain bits and pieces to the Showman's Guild. So I will leave that up to officers to contact Wisbech members to progress that section.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Miss Hoy.
Yeah, well, I was just going to suggest a very slight amendment, which I hope Councillor French won't mind. It was just to say, perhaps if Councillor Tierney can work with the comms team about the fairs and locations and consulting the public on that.
Absolutely, that is his portfolio.
Yeah, so maybe just to
the
say
comms.
that we will, obviously everything else still remains, but obviously we'll work with comms to look to consult the public on future locations of the fair.
Thank you very much for that.
And if it might not need to be a formal amendment, it might just be able to be part of normal business, but
I think the fact that it's been discussed here and clearly it's been agreed will be sufficient rather than amending this particular agenda item. Good. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Right, I've got a couple. The first is just to ask Councillor Mrs. French if she will be willing to have a look with officers at the conditions on termination of the proposed lease as compared with the conditions on termination in the lease which is currently being held over, to ensure that we're getting the best possible deal.
Yes, agree.
Thank you. And the second is, as the portfolio holder for finance, I'll add my comments to the ones already made, that the amount of money which is mentioned in terms of the repair costs and the upgrading costs are really quite eye-watering. I'm not quite sure we are literally gold-plating the car park, but we may not be a million miles away from that, given the amount of money which is involved. I think it is really essential, Councillor French, that we keep close tabs on the capital expenditure on the car park. It mustn't be unsafe, of course, but yet again, to use your own words, it mustn't be gold-plated.
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so we will look at the recommendations. We're first of all being asked to note the report, which I believe we have done. The second is that we agree the lease terms, subject to the comment, the assurance just given by Councillor French. Are we all in favour of the lease terms? Those in favour, please show. And that's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. And finally, to give a steer on the capital works, I believe we've already given something of a steer that we want what is realistic for what is necessary, rather than necessarily the amount of money which is mentioned in the report. So that's the steer I suggest that we give and allow the portfolio member, Councillor Mrs. French, to keep tight control over that.
Yeah,
So-
I do understand that, I do understand that some emergency repairs have already been done, which I wasn't aware of until it was brought to my attention by Wisbech members.
Thank you. So that is the steer that we're proposing. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you. Sorry, item 12 has already been discussed, so we'll move to agenda item 13, which would have been items which I declared under item 3 had been deemed urgent, but there were none. So we can now move to agenda item 14, which are the confidential minutes to be found on pages 185 to 188 of the pack. And we're being asked to agree that as a correct record. Again, I propose to stay in open session for this final item, but if any member wishes to discuss any of the detail in the exempt minutes, then we will need to consider whether to go into exempt session. So may I ask if there is any member who doesn't agree with the minutes to indicate that now, so that we go into exempt session if we have to? No one? Good. So I see no objections to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record of the meeting. So they are now agreed. Thank you very much indeed, members. And this marks the end of the meeting, and I declare the meeting closed. The next meeting of Cabinet is scheduled to take place at 2 p.m. on Monday, the 16th of December 2024. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance.